Her parents died and she was in huge debt. When she was being auctioned off as a plaything, a man spent 100 million to buy her. He gave her the best life and tender care. This man with great wealth and power gently said, "For you, I would give up everything. Even myself." A girl of about 15 stood on the 10th floor of the building, a birthday hat still resting on her head. She wore a simple t-shirt and denim shorts, holding a cake with a lit candle in her hand. Today was supposed to be her father's birthday. The smile on the girl's face ran deep, a clear sign of how much she was looking forward to the birthday celebration. She lifted her head to look at her mother beside her, only to notice that, despite her careful grooming, her face was marked with weariness and fatigue. The girl was taken aback for a moment, but thought little of it and happily walked inside. The closer she got, the more she felt that the atmosphere seemed a little strange. It wasn't until she saw the scene before her that the delicate cake slipped from her hands, crashing to the ground, splitting in two. Iona Nightingale's eyes widened involuntarily as she clasped her hands over her mouth, shivering deeply. Her beloved father had hung himself. Mom. Iona, still just a girl, didn't know what to do in such a situation. She could only turn to look at her mother, but her eyes betrayed her, tears falling uncontrollably. Iona's mother, her lips faintly curved with the red lipstick she had deliberately applied, let out a cold smile. Her tear-streaked face carried an expression as if she had long been expecting this. She turned around, gripping Iona's arm tightly, large drops of tears falling onto her. With a voice trembling with emotion, she said, "Iona, listen to me, you must live well. It's your father and I who are sorry to you." "Mom, what are you saying? What do you mean you owe me? Where are you going? Why would Dad commit suicide? We need to call for help." Iona didn't stop crying, frantically tugging at her mother's hand, but before she could finish speaking, the door was suddenly kicked open with a loud bang. A man covered in tattoos walked in, cigarette dangling from his mouth, leading a group of several men in black, each holding a weapon. Iona jumped in fright, instinctively hiding behind her mother. She pulled Iona in front of her, shouting emotionally, "Remember, we will always love you." After saying her farewell, she rushed toward the open window, gathered all her strength, and leaped out. There was a loud bang. It was the sound of a person falling. "Mom." Her legs gave way, and she sank to the ground, unable to look down. She couldn't understand how things had turned out this way. Her father's birthday had somehow become his day of death. She truly couldn't understand why her parents had suddenly chosen to take their own lives. The words kept echoing in her mind, "Live well. It's your father and I who owe you. Damn it, they actually went and committed suicide. Take the bodies away, and take this woman with you." The man barked orders, and his men quickly began dragging Iona's father's hanged body away. They didn't even spare the body of Iona's mother, who had just committed suicide. One of the men picked her up, and she didn't resist. She was already too terrified by what had just happened. The shock was too much, she didn't even know how to fight back. Iona had been locked in a room for the past few days. Aside from water and food being brought to her, there were also two men standing by the door, keeping watch over her to prevent any accidents. The door opened again, but she was too emotionally drained to care about such things anymore. All she wanted was to go home, to be with her father and mother. Then the man walked in and forcibly pulled Iona up, gripping her chin. "You look pretty good," the man said, holding a black collar in his hand and putting it around her neck. He continued, "Don't blame us, blame your parents for owing us 10 million. The girl widened her eyes slightly, looking at him in disbelief. She knew her father had a gambling habit, but she had no idea he would borrow money from such terrifying people, let alone a sum as large as 10 million. Not their family wasn't very wealthy. It was impossible for them to have so much. Iona let herself be dragged along, feeling like a pet being led by its owner. But she had long forgotten how to be afraid. Alright, today's underground auction officially begins. The rules remain the same as before. No more needless talk, let's start with the first item for bidding, the antique porcelain vase from the Royal Collection, starting price 30 million. The host spoke smoothly into the microphone, his tone practiced. Many people raised their hands, eager to bid. 3,005. 50 million, someone jumped straight to 50 million. The host smiled, looking at the scene, 20 million once, twice, 3 times, congratulations, the antique vase is yours. Next up, we're auctioning a woman. Starting bid, 5 million. In this underground auction, anything and everything could be sold, and nothing was too surprising. Whether it was a person, an item, or an animal, it could all be auctioned off. So the underground auction also has another name, called the dark auction, and it won't be reported. No fool would be willing to do such a stupid thing. Many wealthy families and mafia bosses were fond of these underground auctions. Not only did they support them, but they also invested heavily in them. The consequences of reporting or trying to intervene were unimaginable. Once, a self-righteous person couldn't stand it and anonymously reported the auction. But the consequence? It's said that the body was dismembered, the intestines fed to the dogs, and even his family was wiped out. The scene was too horrific to bear. 3 hours passed, and many items were sold, one after another. Yet the man sitting on the leather sofa below the stage kept his head lowered, absent-mindedly playing with the necklace around his neck, showing no sign of interest. Alright, next up is our finale, a fresh 15-year-old girl. Starting bid at 10 million. 15? Isn't that too young? Several people murmured to each other. When Iona was brought out, her eyes were empty, utterly devoid of expression. It was as if her soul had been drained away, leaving nothing behind. She stood on the stage without a single emotion, offering no resistance. The man, who had been absent-mindedly playing with the necklace, slowly raised his head. He coldly gazed at the girl on the stage, who neither made a sound nor shed a tear. A subtle smirk tugged at the corner of his lips, and his dark eyes gleamed with a sharp, intense interest. 2,000. 3,000. 3,005. Several middle-aged men, intrigued by the girl, eagerly raised their bids, all wanting to taste what she had to offer. 1 million, all by her, the man said, his sharp eyes squinting as he looked at the girl on stage. His deep, magnetic voice rang out, filling the room with shock and tension. Mr. Drakenford, are you sure? The middle-aged man, who had been calling out the bids, sucked in a sharp breath. What's the matter? Do you have a problem? The man shot him a cold glare, as if displeased by his words. As soon as Mr. Drakenford made his bid, the others broke out in a cold sweat, not daring to say a word. The cold smile at the corner of his lips turned into a sharp, piercing chill that shot directly toward the middle-aged man who had just spoken. The man couldn't help but shiver, as if the very air around him had frozen. The man's presence was so overwhelming. When the host heard the bid, he couldn't help but smile and quickly spoke to ease the tension in the air. Finally, something Mr. Drakenford has set his sights on, it's a deal. You can take the girl with you later. Perhaps, Arinder Drakenford didn't know that one day, he would fall hopelessly in love with this girl, to the point that he would be willing to sacrifice his own life without hesitation.